Welcome to Accelerate My Practice. Glad you could join me here today. I just got done shooting a show recently on how to terminate or fire an employee. And now I want to contrast that with how do you hire someone to replace that person? And quite frankly, I hope you kind of watch these in reverse order and have started the process ahead of time before you terminate somebody. But that's a conversation that maybe we'll get to later. You know, relative to the interview process, so many of us, we interview for some hard skills like, can you make a temporary? Can you clean teeth? Can you do some of these things? And to me, those are the minimum to get in the game. That's why we're shooting here in the studio. Or the background, whatever this is. It's cool. We're cutting this out. Anyway, so as we sit here talking about this stuff, you know, to me it's all about not just the skills, because if you can't make a temporary, a good temporary, you know, we shouldn't even be having the conversation. There are minimum things to get in the game that you have to have, and some of those things should be easy to screen for. Then the important stuff happens. The important stuff is, how do we interview for the behavior? How do we interview for the attitude so we can find out, can this person be coached into a higher level of performance? And to me, the secret there is to really get into behavioral questions. What did you do when? Not what would you do, because I don't care what you would do, because you might not do it. But what did you do in this instance? Have some scenarios. Have some scenarios. Ask them, how did they handle some scenario? Have them describe that scenario. Dig into it. Find out what their answer is. Find out what their pet peeves are. One of my questions I love to ask is, you know, what pet peeves do you have that drive you crazy about people? Because if I have those, you won't be a good fit here, right? And I want to know what idiosyncrasies you have, because through asking that question, I'm going to find out. So I think it's an example of a great behavioral question of, hey, what things drive you crazy? What are your pet peeves? What are this? What are that? How did you handle a tough scenario like this? How did you handle conflict with your former boss? Describe that to me. Because what you're going to find out is how people handle life. Because quite frankly, you know, in a perfect scenario, what we would do is get to know them really, really well. Like, we'd go to their house, we'd have dinner, we'd do some stuff. I mean, think about recruiting for professional athletes or even college athletes, right? The recruiter gets to go watch you play basketball on your high school team. The recruiter gets to go have a conversation with you and your parents in your home. And I get to see, is your home chaos? Are your parents disasters? You know, how handy would it be if in that process we could do that when it comes time to recruit an employee? And you know, think about just that terminology. I'm recruiting an employee, or I'm hiring an employee. How much does that psychology change things? Versus, what if I'm looking for talent? I'm looking for top talent for my team. How different does the other person receive this? How different is my experience versus I'm just looking for an employee? I just fired an employee, but I'm looking for another one. What's my psychology going to be like then? Versus, I'm looking for talent. I'm looking for amazing talent that can elevate myself, elevate my team, and elevate the entire experience all of our people have. How different is that? Got to stick to psychology. Psychology is so important, and this especially. If you want to never have to have the conversation about firing an employee, do your due diligence here. I mean, I've had people where it's taken me 6 to 9 months of interviewing for me to hire these people. And I've done that because I've had other people I hired more quickly, and I lived to regret it. You got to trust your gut. You got to take your time. Imagine going to have dinner with a person, having a casual conversation. Imagine going and playing golf. Or imagine taking them rock climbing, right? Lots of people scared of heights. Let's go rock climbing. I mean, if this is an important enough position, imagine you're some huge organization and you're hiring your right hand. I would do something crazy like that. I took my team rock climbing once because I wanted to see how they handled it. You know what I learned? Some people folded and freaked out. Some people were just little monkeys and crawled right up the wall. And then when they were doing it, I started having conversation. And you know what I saw with some? I can't do that right now, Darren. I'm trying to focus. How well is this person going to handle pressure? I learned a lot. It was really interesting. So I would suggest that as you're doing this interview process, don't do it normally, right? These people you spend more time with than you do your actual family when you're awake. You want to have amazing people around you. Take your time. I certainly have not always lived this. And it's been expensive to me. I mean, some people are like, man, 6 to 9 months to recruit somebody? Yeah, because do you know how expensive it is to terminate them, let them go, hire another one, and then train them all over again? Are you kidding me? Take your time. What behavioral things can you ask them that will help you understand who they are, how they handle conflict, how they handle stress, how they handle this? How is their home life? Are they someone who's really struggling at home and they have a drinking problem at home, and to bury their stress, they come to work angry and pissed off? Wouldn't you like to know that? Wouldn't it be interesting to meet their spouse, to meet their kids, to have them come on in, bring their whole family, and maybe even if you don't hire them, you get a new set of patients because they think you're incredible. I mean, if you're the best place to work in your entire city, what's going to happen? You can't say yes to everybody you interviewed, so they understand it's not that easy. You know, relative to this, we've shot a whole bunch of shows on this. We have a whole list of questions I'm not going to dig into here today because we have shot that before, of how can you ask some of these questions. And really, what are you trying to get at? Because, you know, it's one thing to ask the question, but really the meat of the question is the next two questions below. Right? It's one thing to say, hey, how did you handle this stressful circumstance? But really the next question after they tell you about the circumstance, where you say, well, hey, tell me more about that. You know, when that happened, what was going on in your head? What was the outcome you were after? You know, it's that next 3 or 4 questions, that's the meat. And the beauty is we all know how to beat the interview process. We all know how to give a Pollyanna, Miss America kind of answer. But you can't survive those questions if you ask 2 or 3 or 4 more on the backside. You just can't. When you dig deep and you start asking those questions, it's funny to see how it works out. Now imagine they describe some conflict with a former employer, and then you say, hey, can I, you know, they're on your reference list, can I call them? And then you call them. And what's the first thing you're going to ask them about? That scenario. I want to see if the story's real. Is this really how they handle it, or are they just blowing sunshine at me right now? I want to see if this is the exact scenario, and I want to see if they handled it with the amount of grace they said they did. Probably an area I need to improve in. It's amazing how we skip steps, and then we wonder how we end up with crazy people. And usually the subtleties of this is they're subtle. You know, I think about one person, I was checking the reference once, and they say, you know, I wonder how well they'd work on a team. Ding, 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 ding. Should have heard that red flag. I missed it. I hired the person. Guess how well this person worked on a team? Not at all, because they were a genius in their own mind. They weren't coachable at all. They were so arrogant and full of themselves that I was like, holy cow, how did I? And through the paradigm of history, now I see that comment. I'm like, okay, yep, that's what that meant. You know, I get called every now and then for references, and I got called some time ago for a reference on somebody that, you know, sounds like was going through some tough times partway through their employment. And the person was like, hey, you know, would you recommend them? And I said, you know, they're not eligible for rehire. Now, any intelligent person knows that not eligible for rehire means you shouldn't hire this person. I wouldn't hire him again, why would you? But this person who was calling me for the reference was like, oh, I really want to hire this person. I was like, well, can you tell me more? No. You know the law is I can't. I just can't. It's not eligible for rehire. I can confirm the dates of employment. I can confirm this, but no, I'm sorry. And you know what's sad? This person hired this person. I don't know the end of the story. Maybe it all works out okay. Maybe it's fine. Maybe this person changed their life. Maybe they're performing amazing in this place because this is the right home. I don't know the answers. So I can't judge, but I do know that I wouldn't have recommended that person. So you got to be able to read between the lines if you call for references. You got to understand what it is they're trying to very, very politely say, because in this litigious world, when you're calling for references, man, if they don't say much at all, it's probably not a good sign. If they go on and on and on and on about how amazing the person is, it's probably a really good sign. So the reference piece is probably pretty important. And then even with the references, ask behavioral questions. Don't ask the black and white dates of employment, blah, blah, blah. Ask those behavioral questions. How did they handle conflict? How did they handle this? And if they shut down and say, I can't answer that, or submit your request in writing, that's a hint. Take it. Run with it. And understand when they give you a reference, they're giving you the best of the best, right? They're not going to give you a terrible one. They're not going to tell you someone that they struggled with. But that doesn't mean you can't ask, who did you struggle with? I'm just curious. So I would dig into these scenarios to understand them all behaviorally. Take your time. Do not rush this. Hire a temp person in the meantime so you don't have crazy in your office. This screening process is so, so important. I think about the horror stories that happen in the firing process, and right now I'm really wanting to tell some of these stories, but I shouldn't, because you don't want to have to get there. The way to avoid firing people is to do more effective interviews. The way to do more effective interviews is to dig deep into the questions, get into the psychology of the person, understand who they are, read between the lines, watch their body language, get to know them. Because these people, you're entrusting the care of your future, you're entrusting the futures of your office, of your families, to this person in some way, shape, or form, right? If they go do a bad job, the liability they bring to you is unbelievable. So maybe put another set of eyes on them. Team interview. Let the team interview the person. Maybe get a couple of them together. I always do that. I always encourage. In fact, I encourage the interviewee to call my teammates and ask them questions. And my team's smart enough. They know if they get a random call from someone who's interviewing with me, they're going to start grilling them. And guess what they do? They keep notes. So whenever we do this, we have a virtual document we have on every single person, HR file, if you would. All starts in interviews. Anytime I have a conversation with someone and I write down the questions I ask, I write down their answers. And then I put down a note on this is the next topic we need to address. So when one of my teammates goes to interview this person for me, they review the notes and then they have a conversation. It's called planning ahead. Having a plan and executing on it. But you got to have a plan first. You got to know exactly what you want. So relative to knowing what you want, you have to have an amazing profile that would fit your practice. What are the profile characteristics that are non-negotiable? What are the ones that are kind of important? And what are the ones that are like, absolutely no? Create a profile of exactly what this person looks like, metaphorically. And have clarity around it. Share it with your team and say, hey, is this the person we want? This profile. Does this fit? So now when you're interviewing the person, you go back to the profile and you go, okay, do these two match? Because if they don't do it. Just don't do it. You got to trust your gut. If there's anything I've learned the hard way through this process is you have to trust your gut. And if you trust your gut, you'll go much further. So my 2-cent answer to summarize this is when it comes time to do this, get with your coach, sit down, have the coach help you write a profile. The coach will ask you a million questions. The coach will ask you what it's going to look like. They'll script for you, rehearse it, practice it, because this is the most important thing you can do. Hiring the right people is by far the most important thing you can do, because otherwise on the back end you end up having a lot of conversations about problem child employees, and it's just a time drain and an energy suck. And it's not what you want in your life or your practice. It's not what your team wants. So be diligent in this process and take your time. If you got any questions, shoot your coach a phone call. Otherwise, thank you so much. Can't wait to see you 8 o'clock Mountain, 10 o'clock on the East Coast. Till then, have an awesome day.
What if you could have the practice of your dreams? What's holding you back? Imagine a life where you have everything you ever wanted.